Hello, welcome to Drinking with Comics. I'm Shawn,
And I'm Mike.
and we are going to pour a drink and talk about some notable comics of 2023, and then we're going to top that off with our favorite comic of 2023. So this isn't a full list. My full list will be up probably tomorrow on ShawnCBaker.com. That's my 10 favorites. Mike, it was a hard year to pick 10, man. Really, really fucking hard year to pick 10.
I can imagine. I don't think I could even hit 10.
Wow. And you work at a comic shop, but see, that's the thing, though. I have always recognized with Mike Wellman as well. When you work in a comic shop and it's around you all the time, I think that there's a certain exhaustion or jadedness maybe that sets in. But you've turned me on to some great
There's,
stuff, and I was
yeah,
surprised some of it didn't end up in your kind of like we were just talking about what we're going to talk about. But
yeah. I might have forgotten some of them too. But yeah, it's very much like asking someone who works at pizza if they want to go out for pizza. You know,
fair enough, fair enough.
it's not. Yeah.
Well, if you work at
All
Pizza
right.
Hut, I would imagine you'd want to go out for real pizza, not whatever that is. So, Mike, what are you drinking? Wow.
I'm gonna go with my drink of the year, which is from the Old Glory Distillery, right down the street from your house.
Yes.
It's a bourbon I bought when I saw you last time I was in your town neck of the woods. It is probably one of the best bourbons I've had. It's a wonderful distillery. If you're ever in Clarksville, Tennessee, I highly recommend checking them out. I had a really good time checking them out, and yeah, drinking there was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So yeah, drink of the year.
This is not my drink of the year by any stretch, but I had one of these left and had forgot about it.
Okay.
This is I did this on the show once before. This is the O'Fallon, the Knotty, Knotty. It's a peanut butter pretzel beer. Now, I love pretzels and I love peanut butter and I love peanut butter pretzels, like the Trader Joe ones.
Uh-huh.
This beer, I didn't know how to feel about it last time. I'm gonna give it another whirl right now. So let's see. And I just forgot that I had an extra one. I was going through my beer. I drank a lot of beer over Christmas. Merry Christmas, by the way.
You too.
And I was like, oh shit, I still have one of these. So
Nice.
let's see. Oh God, yeah. Okay, now I remember. It's a very like yeasty, very yeasty aroma.
Okay. O'Fallon's, huh?
It it tastes a
Yeah.
lot. It tastes a lot like a pretzel. And I tend to eat pretzels while I'm drinking. I this is
So
not like I wouldn't buy this again. It's interesting. It's a interesting, experiment. Not to put others off because one man's ceiling is another man's floor. But
yeah, I can't imagine wanting to like sit down and session the proper word like
no,
a
absolutely
pretzel
not.
beer. Like
No,
I'm. It's games on in 3 hours. I'm gonna like slam four of these pretzel beers
I can't
down.
imagine ever saying game's on in 3 hours and caring. So, Mike, give me one of your notable comics of 2023.
So my first choice, which shocked me, is the current run of Superman. They just relaunched it. I really enjoyed it. It's written by I think Joshua Williamson, and it's an interesting take on Superman. For reasons I don't know because I didn't read anything Superman in the last 40 years. Lex Luthor's in jail. Superman can hear Lex Luthor in his ear because he's Superman. He can hear everyone on the planet if he really wanted to. But he's really focusing on Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor knows this, and he's like telling him stuff like, "Oh no, you should go and kill that criminal because he's going to go out and rob a bank again. You got to be more tough, Superman." And he's kind of in his own Lex Luthor way trying to make Superman quote unquote better, maybe. But it's Superman. He's not going to go that route. The part that kind of intrigued me was Lex Luthor gives Superman LexCorp, and now it's called SuperCorp. So all the people that used to work for Lex Luthor are like, "Oh wow, I don't have to work for a bad guy anymore. I'm doing good." Or I guess I could scrap this kryptonite laser beam and make a non-kryptonite cancer curing beam or whatever. So it's, they're all acting differently and excited about working for him, and Superman's just now a major business owner, which isn't very Superman-ish. So there's other things going on, obviously, but it was that and a couple other things that just it read good. I enjoyed it, so
Interesting.
I read the first couple up till Night Terrors, and I haven't gotten back on it yet. But it was a surprising read, especially for Superman. There's not a lot of Superman books I could recommend outside of maybe All Star and Red Sun, Superman for All Seasons. You could probably count them on one hand, the amount of Superman books I've read that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I thoroughly
Right.
enjoyed this one.
Sounds a lot like it was influenced by Superior Spider-Man, and the fact
Yeah, a
that
little
like
bit.
Peter at one point Peter was like in charge of Oscorp or had his own corporation or something. That wasn't Superior Spider-Man though. I know Superior
I
Spider-Man,
think,
and that's a theme
yeah,
that we see in these books, right? Where it's like even going back to my favorite Spider-Man story from the '80s, the J.M. DeMatteis, Mike Zeck, Craven's Last Hunt, where it's like Craven basically says, "I'll be a better Spider-Man because I know how far I should take it. You don't take it far enough."
yeah. I guess at 100 years you got to do something different. You
Oh
run out
yeah, yeah.
of.
I mean, it's interesting to apply that kind of I'm in no way am I saying it's like ripping it off. I'm just saying it's interesting. You could see shades of
Yeah.
that and where he may have gotten an idea.
And the other thing is, like, Lex Luthor has bad guys that he vanquished before Superman showed up. So those bad guys are coming back to town now that Lex Luthor's in jail. So there's
Okay.
like this whole other aspect of like who's worse than Lex Luthor.
So this is a run that's still it's still going. You said they just took 2 weeks
This
or 2 months off to
this
do.
this is the current run. I believe it picked back up again. It might be on issues 6 or 7. I honestly don't remember. Um, but you should be able to get the first issue. Came out, middle of summer
Okay.
when they kind of relaunched that.
With the all the continuity upheavals with DC, is this like because you said they relaunch it. So are they at the point now where, like, when Marvel relaunches Spider-Man, it's not because anything changed with the continuity. They just a new writer comes on and they put it as number one. Is it like that, or is this like we're starting at
I
zero with the continuity, or is it New
I think it's a new
52?
writer starting off with a new number one, like
Okay.
how Marvel does, which I don't mind. I've actually grown quite like it makes it easier to go like, hey, if you want to pick up Superman, you could go to number one. You don't have to read anything else because this is the starting point
Yeah.
with that writer, and you don't have to worry about going back and figuring out, do I need 284 or 285? Does it tie in? I'm getting on that boat that Marvel's doing that, even though it's annoying when it comes to back issues. And now that they put the little legacy number on there, it makes things easier to count for those who
Yeah.
really need to know what's going on with what issue this is. But I'm starting to be on board the this is the new writer starting number one thing.
Yeah. That's
Makes
fine.
it easier to go like, okay, I can pick this up.
I've it irritated me for a long time, but I mean now I don't care. It's whatever.
Yeah, it irritates me every time I have to put a back issue away. Yeah,
Continuity isn't quite, there's data compression, there's like story compression and whatnot now that helps where it's like, you don't have to, because it used to be if you were reading Spectacular Spider-Man 179 and it referenced something that happened in number 91, it would say editor's note, 91,
yeah,
and then you'd go back and look for that. Now I feel like they just will either put it in a flashback or the writer will or artist will show it to you or tell it to you in some way where it's like, I got it. I don't need to get that. It's fine. So
yeah. And I like that, like, at least they're keeping Detective and Action Comics as like the legacy numbers.
yeah,
Like, keep those going. We don't need to relaunch those because they've been around forever. Yeah,
that was always my thing where it's like, why would you take a book like Fantastic Four, Detective Comics that have these high runs and just nope, bye, number one. So And I think that's what they did initially, and then they got wise to the fact that like, wait, let's do the legacy thing just so we keep because it is a legacy, right? So
Yeah,
it's an achievement.
it
Um,
is. I mean,
okay,
I
so
never
my
thought I'd see it.
my first notable of the year, and this will be on my top 10. I'm not entirely sure where it's in my top 10. I have my top 10, but the
Okay,
order is still not locked in. So, like I said, that'll be on SeanCBaker.com probably tomorrow. But
that's the hardest part.
dude, fucking X-Men Red. It's so fucking good, Mike. Like I loved Immortal X-Men when it started, and now with the most recent, the last issue, number 18, literally my review the other day was on this show was fuck this book. Like I I really don't I don't see myself. I'm definitely going to go through the fall of the House of X and the Rise just because it's 5 issues and to come this far not do it, I feel like would be stupid. But the end of the Krakoa era is like kind of where it's like I don't know that there would be anything else that interests me because that's what brought me in was that novel concept. And
Now that's the island that brings them all back from the dead,
yeah,
right?
well, it's like it's a living island where it's become a nation of mutants and it's a sovereign
Yeah.
nation. And so there's been some great and I haven't read all of Hickman's stuff, but there's been some great like there's an issue early on where it's like of Hickman's run where it's like Magneto, Chuck, and Apocalypse dressed in business suits. So you get to see Apocalypse in a fucking three-piece suit, right? Go to the
I
United
kind of love
Nations for
that.
a meeting. Oh, it was I was blown away. But anyway, since
And you generally don't like those guys,
I
like
dude,
Charles Xavier,
Magneto's like
Magneto.
Magneto and well, I still don't like Chuck, but he's interesting now. Magneto
Okay,
became one of my favorite characters under Hickman and then Ewing, Duggan, and Gallen, and they killed him. And you know he's coming back. I mean, I've known all along, but he's been gone for months. And there was something about the way that they killed him, where like they all have these backups, and so him and Storm broke their backups in X-Men Red early on because the Iraqi people are like, who are you to even sit at this table with us? Like, you guys can come back from the dead. We don't do that. So they broke their backups. They're like, no, we don't either. And then like 2 months later, he was dead. But and the thing with X-Men Red, so I never read that X of Swords or whatever that Hickman wrote in his run. So I'm still
okay.
really, I don't totally understand the whole thing with like what was Araco, which was like a sister island to Krakoa, but it was in some other dimension or some shit. I don't fucking know. And there's all these mutants there. They're all like more like alien looking. And I don't know what happened in that, but I guess they lost that island. So then in Planet Size X-Men #1, which was the first X-Men book that I think I read under the Hickman thing, even though he didn't write that, I think it was Duggan or Ewing, I forget. But that's where it was like Iceman, Storm, and Magneto basically terraform Mars, turned it into a livable atmosphere and for people from Earth, and say this is now Araco, the mutant planet, and like this is the ambassador planet of our solar system to the
Oh,
rest of the galaxy. And
so they
it's
stopped racism.
so it's populated by all these Iraqi mutants, right? And it's
Okay,
so the cast is largely nobody you know. It's Storm, it was Magneto, and then Roberto da Costa, Sunspot was there. Cable was in and out. Abigail Brand was in and out. And that was really it. And then it's all these people that like they're all like creatures. There's like a guy that's like an eyeball. There's all I couldn't even tell you. I don't even remember their names really for the most part. But anyway, the book took on this grand odyssey that it reminds me so much of Rick Remender and Jerome Opena's Seven to Eternity. So much. Like it's like sci-fi fantasy without the
okay.
tropes that usually hinder that genre, in my opinion. And it's just fucking glorious. And it never relented. It's been great. And it's literally just built the whole time. Fan fucking tastic. Fantastic book. Al Ewing just did a killer job. And I just feel like that's going to be, the high point, and then everything over the next 5 months as we enter this end of the Krakoa, whatever it's is going to be a postscript that I'm going to end up, and maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am, but then I'm going to be like, yeah, that was X-Men Red was still the best thing.
Oh, I've never read X-Men, so it's kind of hard. That was one of those things I never really got into.
You'd be
So
lost. Well, you would actually
yeah,
no,
I'd be lost.
you would not be lost. I'm not telling you to read it though, but you would not be
Yeah.
lost because it doesn't pertain to anything we've seen in any of the X books really before.
Okay. It's its
So
own thing.
it's its own thing, and it's got a galactic scope, and it's just yeah. Actually, you would not be. In fact, like there's elements of it where I feel lost because I know X-Men stuff and I don't know anything about these Iraqi, but I'm learning as I go, and so they're newer characters, so I feel like it's fine. Eventually, I'll read X of
Okay.
Swords. I just haven't, but
All right. Well, my book two is one that I read last night. Um, that I thought was surprisingly really good. It was also written by Joshua Williamson, so I guess bonus points for him.
mhm.
Uh, the new Duke series.
Ah,
Thoroughly enjoyed that. I've been kind of slowly getting back into GI Joe, more so than before. Maybe it's just nostalgia's kicking in now that I'm 50, but oh boy. But yeah, Duke's one of those characters I never liked before. Too pretty boy, too golly gee whiz leader of the group type guy. But I really enjoyed this book. I liked how dirty it was. Like he's kind of like going a little nuts. Not nuts per se, but like everyone's just like, to recap, if you haven't read it, in the Transformers appearance where Starscream crushes his friend,
yeah.
he's just like, there's these giant robots. Why is there giant robots? And not coping with it, and the government's like, you didn't see no giant robots. Don't worry about that.
Well,
And
Hawk,
just kind of
General
going off
Hawk
the
is essentially
range.
telling him that, right? Which is interesting because
Yeah,
those are two
yeah,
fundamentally good GI Joe characters, right? That's the top of the team, and
yeah. Hawk was always the leader, and Duke was the second in command slash leader, depending on what thing you watched. Because I don't think Hawk was really in the cartoon originally. If he
I'm
was, he
not
wasn't
sure
there very
actually.
much. Yeah, but I mean, they were growing up. For my memory, those two characters were indistinguishable. Outside
Yeah,
of
I
like
agree. I
one had
agree with
blonde
that.
hair, one had brown hair.
I
Yeah,
agree with that.
it was. But this, Duke really took his interesting character turn. I like that, Destro shows up in it. I enjoyed Mercer.
Oh, dude, what a weird pull, man. What a weird
Yeah, because
pull.
he's the now I couldn't remember. Maybe you can refresh my memory. He was part of Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders, wasn't he?
So it's so funny because I would not have even recognized him. In some vague way I would have, but I would have been like, who the fuck is this? And when I was in the shop 2 weeks ago, Rick's Comic City, they had on that GI Joe movie, that Abomination, where like it pushes all the old characters out to bring in Don Johnson as Lieutenant Falcon, who's Duke's half brother, and fucking
Yeah,
blah blah blah. And there's such a concentration on shitty characters in the cartoon, unlike the Transformers cartoon, which I always thought after the movie just got better and better. And the Joe cartoon, it just
well,
becomes like
Tunnel Rat,
ridiculous. Yeah,
Tunnel
okay,
Rat,
but
man,
but just
Tunnel Rat's a great character.
in
Yeah,
general though, it's a far inferior show in my opinion what they did with it. And there's such an emphasis on Sergeant fucking Slaughter all the time, right? And yes, Mercer is
yes,
the ex-Viper that is like been converted to be a good guy. So if they're going with, because Kirkman has said his Energon universe is based more on the cartoons than the comics, which is fine, but it's
yeah.
not a continuation of the cartoon. So he's taking certain. So in effect, then we've just seen Mercer before he is plucked for the
So
Joe
yeah,
team.
and so spoilers, in 10 years when Mercer switches sides,
Yeah, right.
we know why. But yeah, I thought that was a good, like you said, a good pull. Like I didn't see that coming out of nowhere. Like that was a weird one to just show up. I thought, we're gonna see Snake Eyes or something. I'm glad we didn't.
I am too.
Uh,
I am too.
Especially at the last page where like we got to pull this team together, and they pick the two characters they picked. I was like, wow, spoiler, it wasn't Snake Eyes, and I
Yeah,
was very
right.
excited that it wasn't Snake Eyes. It was
Well,
two characters I thoroughly enjoy in the GI Joe universe. Um, that I don't think get enough. The original 13 characters. I think they're original 13. They're called,
I think so, yeah.
but
No, they
yeah,
are. They definitely
um,
are.
yeah, and yeah, I thought they were a good choice, and I'm more excited to see what they're going to do with them than anything else.
I know what you mean, though. Well, and also, so this is still this book starts before there is a Joe team, right? So I thought that
Yes,
was interesting because there's a whole thing where it's like Duke is talking to Hawk and he's basically being debriefed, right? About
yeah,
the whole thing with Starscream. And he basically just he doesn't say fuck you, but he's insubordinate. And then the next, I think Hawk says take a vacation or something, but then he's like AWOL essentially. Like you see him driving a Jeep, he's got like a couple weeks worth of a beard, he's got long scraggly hair, which was cool because like exactly like you said, I've never liked Conrad S. Hauser as a character. He's
yeah.
too blonde hair, blue eye, all American.
If he hasn't thrown a touchdown in the original cartoon, wouldn't be shocked if someone came up to me and said he did.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
how cookie cutter 80s American all that he's always been, in my opinion. Outside of
yeah.
maybe the GI Joe Renegades cartoon, which if you haven't seen is really freaking good. Yeah, but that character I've never seen anything that I liked that he was in. Not the movies, except who's he in the movies? Tatum,
I Oh, Channing Tatum. Yeah,
Channing Tatum. Yeah, he was awful in the first one. Then for some sort of reason, the world grew to love Channing Tatum,
he's
and then
not in
by
the
the
first
second one,
one,
they
I don't
decided to
think.
kill him off.
I don't think
Oh,
he's in
he's
the
in the
first one,
first one.
is he?
Yeah, he is the main character in the first one.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
Oh no,
and
I
then
know
like
one of
no
them.
one.
One of them was pushed a year because he had all of a sudden become a star, and so they re-edited it
Yes,
to have more of him, right?
which was just him hanging out with The Rock, playing video games basically, and then he
Those
dies.
movies, those movies. I mean, I-
Oh, the first one is awful. The second one is the awful I wanted from the first one.
yeah, that's a good
It
way to say. I
still
mean,
is
there's
awful.
enough
Yeah.
in it. There is enough in that second one. Like when they show RZA as the blind master and don't even explain who the fuck he is, I was literally like, that was for me. Like, so there's enough of that shit in it, but it's still just, it's like,
Yeah.
God, why is this so fucking hard? My other notable book, um, I just, I really got to say, and I've said this before on the show, but I have to reiterate one of the things I love about comics, reading monthly. So, because a lot of people are like, I just read the trades, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But one of the
Yeah.
reasons I'm so endeared to reading monthly is because for decades I've had a book like we'll go back Preacher. Preacher was a book where I would pick it up at your shop.
Oh.
I mean, it predates me coming to your shop, but wherever I
But
would go
yeah.
to buy it, I would get it. I would walk out to the car. I would sit in the car and I'd fucking read that book before I even started the car and left the car because I had to read it right fucking now. Right.
First book I read when I got home on a Wednesday after work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because obviously. But yeah, it was I remember distinctly like being very excited about coming home and reading that every month.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's been other things that cycle in, but the other big one was Walking Dead for years. Like just I have to I have to read this right fucking as soon as it's in my hands, don't fucking talk to me for 5 minutes because I'm gonna read this. And I just love that capitulation of the excitement and the drama over a span of time. And I love that. And so after Walking Dead, I didn't have that for a long time. There's a couple things that like kind of came close where it's like, oh, cool, new issue, but nothing where it's like, I need to read this right fucking now because there was so much writing on the end of the last issue.
Okay.
And Something is Killing the Children does it every fucking time. Fucking book is
Nice.
absolutely incredible. I put off reading it for until earlier this year, I think, or late last year. I forget, but and it was just something so stupid as I was going through because I had moved from a bigger place in 2018 to a smaller place. I had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and I was very seriously like, I need I need to be aware of what I'm buying and what I'm bringing into the apartment because space. So I got in this very like clinical approach to buying comics. Here's a new number one. Is it interesting? Well, yeah, but do I need it? No. And I remember holding that first issue and thinking that, putting it down, didn't read it. It caught on, and I had been reading Tinian's The Woods previous to that, and it was okay. I really liked it. It was a book about like a high school that just all of a sudden disappears from where it is in our world and ends up in a forest somewhere else. And it's a
Okay.
different world, and you don't know. So it had a cool Lord of the Flies vibe, but also this like lost vibe, but good. And I really liked the book. And then it kind of started going into like knights and medieval shit. And I was like, I'm out. I'm good because I don't like that shit. So I was unconvinced. And then there was so much hype building up around something's killing the children and Tinian, and I was like, eh. And when I finally started reading it, man, those first fucking three trades, the fact that it's like, I think the first three trades are only like a couple days in the timeline. And it's an event that like she gets to this town where there's been a monster, so it's like, okay, starts with these kids, monsters kill all but one. She comes in, nobody knows who she is, the authorities are suspicious, blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like this shit escalates so fucking fast. And so for the duration of three trade paperback collections, it's this event and the fallout from it. And it escalates to just like a place where you're like, holy fuck. And then leaves things completely blown up from where you thought you were and then starts over. And then it does it again where you're like, I don't know okay, where do we sit with these characters and everything? He's a master. He's such a good fucking writer. And he gets a lot of hype. And I know a lot of people like I was are like, I don't know, he's so overhyped, worth every fucking. But sometimes the hype is worth it, right?
Okay. I've only read his Batman stuff that I didn't really care for, but that's because I think that's more of a DC thing than a writer thing. I've
Yeah.
been meaning to pick this up. There was a lot of like I was gonna do this book, I was gonna read this book, but then we had like a book club before COVID, and then it was like, oh, I'll just do it at the book club and read it then, because sometimes I like putting stuff off to discuss with that. But then that disbanded basically when COVID happened, a little bit before that actually. But so I kind of put that off then, and then I heard it got signed as a TV show one day, someday. So now I'm kind of just waiting for that aspect of it. Not that I don't think the show would be bad or something. I just don't want spoilers for the show.
The show will be good because I forget their names.
Yeah.
It's the couple that did, or I don't know if they're a couple, but they're a team. The team that did Dark, the three season German show that is it is the best time travel conundrum. And it basically
Okay.
takes Donnie Darko and says, what if we take Donnie Darko and really like blow it up to a larger scenario? It's genius. And so the fact that they're doing this, not that this has anything to do with time travel, but I just
Yeah.
really dig the way they do things. So I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
But
I'm excited to watch the show. I'm gonna one of these days I'm gonna break down and read it. You're probably gonna make me do it for like one of these videos maybe,
oh, that's a
and
good
I'll be
idea. No,
fine with that.
dude, you'll blow through the trades. Like I would
Oh, I'm
imagine it'll be
sure.
like 15 minutes a trade, 20 minutes a trade. I mean, it's like The Walking Dead, where the art and the story are just so they work so well together that I mean, it doesn't take more than 5 issues to read a
That's
comic, but it's still one of the most
There's
fulfilling
something
reads.
wonderful about that. Yeah, when
Yep.
you get that right combination of the art really tones in with the storytelling. It doesn't always hit out often as it should, but when it happens, it's great. It's a
Yeah,
wonderful thing.
I agree.
I can't think of a million books off the top of my head that great story, but some of the worst art I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, why did you not?
Well, it might not even be the worst
or
art. It could be great art, but it doesn't service the writing the way. Because, like, both with
yeah,
nothing against Walking Dead and Charlie Adlard, the artist, or this, and I forget the name of the artist for Something That's Killing Children, but they're not my favorite artists by any stretch of the imagination. I mean,
no,
it's
but
very
it
good, but it
works.
services the
Yeah,
story so fucking well.
yeah.
So
There's
it's
people that like there's always like there's art that services the writing, and there's writing that has to service the art, and that one, the latter never works.
Yeah.
Is it time for my number one?
It's time. What's your favorite comic book of the year, Mike?
So I back to the whole sitting down and reading everything at once thing. What I have been enjoying was Chip Zdarsky's, and I don't apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Zdarsky's
I think
run
it's Zdarsky.
of Daredevil. Zdarsky, okay. His current run of Daredevil that just ended earlier this year. I really, I am, I am a mediocre Daredevil fan. Like, I can't say like I've ever read the Frank Miller stuff. I'm sure there's gonna be someone screaming at the screen like, "You should read that." I don't care. It's before my time. I don't think I care to read it. I know what happens. I'm okay with that. I read Bendis's run of Daredevil and loved it when it came out, and I still think that's probably my number one run of Daredevil.
Hmm.
So dark, and if you, I don't know, did you ever read that one?
I did.
I
It was
feel
great.
like I might have been telling you about it. Yeah, him, proclaiming himself as Kingpin
Yeah, great.
still
Absolutely.
sticks in
One of
my
the
head.
most
Like,
iconic Daredevil moments.
yes, someday the show will do that and just be like chef's kiss on that.
Hmm.
Um, and then the other Brubaker took over, and I kind of lost interest because Daredevil's not a character that I gravitate to too much.
Hmm.
But and then eventually other people picked it up and wrote it. I'm sure some of them are great runs, but I never really got into it that much until Mark Waid picked it up and took him to like a 360 happy place where he's smiling all the time and enjoys what he's doing. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Matt Murdock. I may not be Daredevil, but think you ladies could use a drink." Really playing the fun aspects of Daredevil and also the pitting him against villains that Daredevil should be fighting on a daily basis, like the Claw, who's just made of sound. How does that,
Oh.
screw with Daredevil's radar? And I think the first one was Spot, like another character. Like, I don't think I've ever read a Spot book outside of that brief appearance in Daredevil and the last Spider-Man cartoon movie to come out, the Into the Spider-Verse, where he's been an interesting character in any form or matter. But to see the Spot in Daredevil vision, if you would, his
Hmm.
radar vision, like it doesn't cope with the way he runs, his sonar, and how he sees it. It messes with him. To pit him against characters like that was a very interesting read. And
Hmm.
also to emphasize, he did a really good job of emphasizing his blindness. The best panels, like it's 2-page spread, if you can find it. You see his like him walking down the street talking to Foggy, and he's got his radar and his senses and his smell going, and one of the senses is picking up, a ball calling into the street or someone talking or a girl's perfume. And I kid you not, there's a picture of a girl's butt because he's using his radar to check out a girl's butt because he's the player that he is.
That's
And I love
hysterical.
that. That was just like such a great, like, yeah, even Matt Murdock takes time to be a man,
To ogle women.
to ogle a woman in his own way.
Oh my
In a way that
God.
he can't get caught on. So the Zardarsky stuff, to get back on track, I'm sorry,
No, that's
was the
okay.
more current run outside who's currently running it, writing it now. It just ended, like I said earlier. And that kind of picks up in a different area of Daredevil where no one knows who he is, which I think kind of works with the three. Because if you remember the Bendez one, everyone kind of finds out who he is because he basically comes out and says it,
Hmm.
that I am Daredevil, I am Kingpin. The Wade run, everyone's like, "Hey, you're Daredevil." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not Daredevil." He even wears a T-shirt that says, "I'm not Daredevil." And then at some point in time, Purple Man's kids erases everyone's memory, and now no one knows who he's Daredevil anymore, including
Convenient.
Kingpin, who's
Okay.
always kind of known he was Daredevil, even
Well,
from
yeah.
what I remember in the Frank Miller stuff.
Yeah. Born Again.
And yeah, so it's an interesting run to read where everyone doesn't know who he is, and because of the way the Purple Man's kids did their spell or their immune thing or whatever you call it, um, if you picked up a piece of paper that says like, hey, look, Daredevil's Matt Murdock, your brain automatically sees that piece of paper as blank, or dog flies down street, or whatever. It doesn't register. Your brain, everyone's brainwashed to not is forcibly to not remember that he is Daredevil.
Okay.
So, when um, there's a part in the series where Kingpin actually goes to find a file that's sitting in his old house, and it says Daredevil's secret identity, and opens it up and all the pages are blank. It just kind of drives him over the edge. And the mayor of New York. So which is what ultimately leads into Devil's Reign, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
which is like the big story in that. But there was just a lot of like him dealing with cops that I enjoyed. I enjoyed his interplay with theirs, and I enjoyed there's even bigger villain than Kingpin, which I believe their names are the Stormwinds, which is like the rich 1% of the 1%. So they're like
Okay.
the ones that could truly control the city. So, the ultra rich that, pull all the strings in the world and, want to tear down Hell's Kitchen and turn it into a casino or whatever ultra rich people want to do. They're fighting Daredevil and Kingpin because Kingpin doesn't want to bow down to someone else that is their
Okay.
better, his better. So there's that storyline going on. Eventually, and the reason why I picked it up was the Elektra taking over and that really awesome costume. That
Yeah, it's a great costume design.
yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, seeing that work into play and the costume he eventually gets into, which is kind of like a take on that one, where he's got the beard and he's also fighting the Hand, which is run by Punisher. So there's a little bit of the Punisher crossover going on, which is also another good book from last year. I just enjoyed the heck out of it. Um, I finished it last night. It ended kind of neat, but not great. But that's how these things go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a good, solid Daredevil run. Not going back, probably my third favorite Daredevil run out of the three that I've read.
Okay.
But
Still.
yeah, I thought it was solid, a good, enjoyable read. Can't recommend it enough. I could give you more spoilers, but I think I gave you enough. Devil's Reign crossovers with it. Yeah, fight the Hand, Devil, God, everyone.
I I've definitely it looks great. I've heard good things, but I've also talked to people that are like, yeah, everybody that likes this just has never read the Frank Miller run because it's takes a lot from it. So that makes sense. And I'm not a huge I'm a casual Daredevil fan as well. I probably like him a little bit more than you, but it's not something that where like I have to read it. But the
Yeah,
Frank Miller stuff I do really like. Probably my favorite Daredevil is there's a pocket, and it's not even a continuous story. Just there's an era where it's Ann Nocenti writing it in the '80s, and John Romita Jr. drawing it. And this is like it's some of it that ties over with the original Inferno, and so Murdoch is like dead, but he's not, but he's missing, and he's all bandaged up, and Typhoid Mary's running around, and that to me is one of my favorite. I like some of the Black Armor stuff. That was cool. Where like I feel like it was Calypso took his blood, made a demon that looks like Daredevil,
yeah,
but like a demon. And I know they have that team back to do another story in that era, like starting next month or in 2 months or something. I won't
I
be
think
reading
that
it. I didn't
already
like it
came
that,
out.
or maybe it did. I don't know. It might
Or
have.
I can't remember. I know what you're talking about, the Black Armor
Yeah, the
series.
Black
Yeah.
Armor. Uh,
Back to Typhoid Mary. She's also in it, married to Wilson Fisk,
well, and so that's been a thing
which
with
is I thought was another thing too.
That's a thing in the X books that's been interesting where Fisk, I guess when he was ousted, he went to live on Krakoa because he's married to Typhoid Mary, who's a mutant. So if you're a
Really?
mutant, they welcome you, right? If you fuck around, there's punishment, but for the most part, like all of you can come. So that's been one of the things about that Hickman era where it's like there are no good team, bad team. It's just all the mutants live on a fucking island.
So
So
Kingpin's on the island.
so
Because he
Kingpin's on
just
the
left. I
island,
didn't know where he went. Yeah.
and he figured into the recent storyline, interestingly, because they had the Hellfire Gala this year, and he was there, and so he witnessed what happened. So there was this whole story where it's like he was this witness that then this Orcus organization, which is the new like anti-mutant whatever, uh, basically was trying to find out who the witness was, and he was being protected by the X-Men because he was the human witness. So it was pretty interesting. I enjoyed that, but yes, Typhoid Mary. I didn't even realize she was a mutant. It makes sense, but so okay. Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil is your number one. My number one.
Yeah.
Now I had a hard time getting my list down to 10, and it's a hard time figuring out what's where except for the number one. I knew right away. I knew the day that I read it in May. I'm like, this is the best book I'm going to read all year. And that's Brubaker and Phillips' Night Fever. It was their original graphic novel. They took a break from the Reckless books, which are all fucking outstanding. And to the point where when I did my list last year, I just said, caveat, I'm not counting Reckless because it'll just destroy the curve. So it's fucking amazing. I did that with that and Silvercoin. I just took them out of the running. I said, these are the other, these are 10. So this book, it is original standalone, and it's just what they do, which is this pulp noir crime. It is absolutely fantastic. It's just about a guy in a different country who picks up on a scenario that changes his world and gets drawn into things. You've seen stories like it before. Man, I don't know. It was masterful, and I've thought about it pretty much every day since I read it in some way or another. So
Nice.
I can't wait. I mean, I can't wait for Reckless to come back, but they got another one coming soon called like Where the Body Was Found or something like that. I'll be picking that up. At this point, anything they do. And I love that they've started this format where like people could say, we're not going to do this as a mini series that then gets collected. We're just going to put this out as a $24.99 hardcover, and people will buy it. It'll be a bestseller. And I love that they did that. And I love the book.
I feel like they've been doing that a lot with a lot of their other books, weren't they?
No, they started that with
the comic book store.
They started that right before Reckless with I forget what the first one was, but there were two before Reckless, and then with Reckless they're just like, this is how we're doing it. And I mean, they're just, it's so good. It's just so good. So yeah, this is Night Fever, Brubaker Phillips. Fantastic.
Nice.
Until whenever we come back for Drinking with Comics.
Yes.
I'm Shawn.
I'm Mike.
Hi, I'm Shawn. Join me and my friends every week for the Horror Vision, where we talk about horror movies.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Shawn C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.